I call the Patton Township Board of Supervisors February 23rd, 2022 meeting at 5:30 to order. Welcome, especially new Patton Township residents, to the Patton Township community, which is a place for all. As you are able, please join the board in the Pledge of Allegiance. Next on the agenda is the posted agenda. Are there any supervisors that would like to add an item to the posted agenda at this time, or a manager? Okay,
No, Mr. Chair,
okay.
just like to make an announcement that the board did meet in executive session last Friday on the 18th with the solicitor, the manager, the director of finance and admin, and labor council. We reviewed a personnel issue and a collective bargaining matter related to Police Officers Association. The results of that executive session will be addressed in item 4B coming up later.
All righty. Next on the agenda is public comments. Residents, taxpayers may address the board on issues of interest to the township. Comments related to a specific agenda item should be deferred until that point in the meeting. If you are attending by Zoom, please use the raise hand feature of the Zoom application and wait for the chair to indicate it is their opportunity to speak. If you are attending in person, please approach the podium and wait for the chair to indicate that it is your opportunity to speak. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Next on the agenda, since we don't have anything on the posted agenda, move to 3A, and that's the presentations and public hearing. First on the agenda is the update on COVID-19 from Mount Nittany Health Center. Doug, would you like to introduce?
We have with us tonight Mr. Tom Charles. He's the Executive Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer for Mount Nittany Health Center. Mr. Charles has been working with various entities throughout the center region and the county since the pandemic began, and I think he's a very good representative of the community to give us an update from the Mount Nittany Health Center's perspective on currently conditions at the hospital and in the community. Thank you, Mr. Charles. Please go ahead.
Welcome, sir.
Okay, well, thank you very much to all of you for inviting me. I see some familiar faces even behind masks, so it's good to see you. And for those of you who I haven't met, it's nice to make your acquaintance. Is my audio coming through okay?
Yes.
Understandable? Okay, great. I am going to share my screen, if that's okay, and I'll have a few slides to share. Oh, I see that, I don't know if I'm able to share my screen.
Yep, now you can.
Okay. All right, very good. Are those slides coming through okay for everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, they are. Thank you, Tom.
All right, very good. Whoops, sorry. All right, well, let me start off by saying that when I do these updates, I am really here on behalf of the staff at the health system and at Mount Nittany Medical Center. We have a tremendous team, and it's a team that has been working under extraordinary circumstances for the last 2 years. And in particular, as I'm about to show you, under very extraordinary circumstances over the last number of months. And so I get the privilege of coming and talking to you, but I am really talking on their behalf and extending their gratitude for your support. I want you to know our appreciation for the remarkable work that they're doing, the adaptability that they have displayed through all of this, and their daily efforts to do everything they can for each of you and for your friends and your neighbors. So credit to our team. I'm going to show you a bunch of numbers but that is in no way, shape, or form meant to minimize the human element of all of this. If any of you have been in the position of having COVID or having friends who've had COVID, or, certainly I would hope not, but, individuals close to you who have passed away because of COVID, I don't have to explain the personal toll that this has taken on our team, on those individuals, on the entire State College community, Center Region community, and Center County. So there's a very human element to all of this as well, and I don't want to forget about any of that. So I'm coming tonight. This is the first time I've been able to give a public presentation where there is a little bit of good news at the end of the presentation. So I'm delighted to be able to do that. And we'll just kind of jump right into it and give you the overview. So it goes without saying, we have been working through an extended surge really driven by the Omicron variant, which, as you probably know, much more contagious than the Delta variant, much easier to get, much easier to spread. For individuals who have not been boosted, the immunity levels to Omicron are lower than what they would be with Delta. And it's been imperative through this last stretch, and will continue to be, to observe masking and social distancing, even with vaccination. These measures have been important in controlling the spread. And so what we found ourselves in the last number of months is with a highly contagious variant active in the community, starting with base vaccination rates, that are not incredibly high in Center County. And then on top of that, having a subset of those who were vaccinated being boosted, combined with, what's turned out to be a significant variation in masking behavior and things across the community. It's not a surprise that we saw the kinds of numbers that I'm going to show you here in a couple of slides. December and January were record-breaking months in this community. You'll see it in the graphs. January, last month, we surpassed the previous high number of cases in the community by almost twofold. This was impacting the health system. It was impacting individuals. It was impacting businesses. I can't tell you the number of businesses and business owners that I talked to who were struggling because of the high numbers of staff that they had out, because of COVID. And it was certainly impacting what we could do at the health system. As the number of COVID cases rose, our ability to continue to do surgeries in the way that we normally would do them was impacted. Our wait times in the emergency department began to back up because of the congestion on the inpatient beds. One point I want to get across is that treating a COVID patient is much more resource intensive than treating a patient that does not have COVID. So a hospital that has 60 COVID patients in it is going to require a much greater intensity of staff resources than a hospital that has 60 non-COVID patients in it. And so what was going on in the health system was high numbers of COVID patients requiring extraordinary resources. In combination with that, we were finding that staffing shortages in area nursing homes were making it very difficult for us to get patients discharged from the hospital. And so consequently, they were staying considerably longer than what they normally do. And so the combination of having those individuals in the hospital who are not normally there because we could discharge them, combined with the very resource-intensive care of high numbers of COVID patients, is why you saw things being far from ordinary at Mount Nittany Medical Center, for an extended stretch of time. And so that's the short story of what was going on. The good news is, if you've been tracking this, that the cases have begun to come down, and that's very good news. And the number of COVID patients in the hospital has come down as well. And so we're getting to a point where, things are definitely manageable in a different way than they were. And hopefully getting to the point where we are once again experiencing, significantly low numbers of COVID patients. So here are the graphs, just to put this in some perspective. This is the number of new cases, confirmed cases in Center County by month. And you can see that in December, it was at that point the highest month that we had. This is where we were last winter. So, when pre-vaccination and when things were kind of the first big wave, you can see where we were. Well, in December, we were well above that. And then January, we just went through the roof. 6,000 new cases in 1 month. And so, these have been extraordinarily challenging. Right now in February, so far through the month, we're at a little over 1,000. So, clearly coming down from where we have been. This is the rolling 7-day average of cases in the county. And again, you can see where we were. This is all the way back last fall, then last winter. Then we got down to very low numbers over the summer, picked up again in the fall, started to pick up more in the late fall, and then just skyrocketed as we got into the end of December and January. And now we are back down again to levels that are more in line with where we were in the early fall. And so, a huge spike, but we've been falling off and getting the numbers back to, lower levels. This is the number of patients that we've had in the hospital every day, all the way back to the beginning of the pandemic. And you can see very low numbers to start, spiked up last winter, came back down, after the holidays, spiked back up in the spring, got down to very low numbers in the summer, and then, picked up again this fall. And since the middle of September, up until just a few days ago, we did not have fewer than 30 COVID patients in the house for months. And we spiked all the way up to the mid-70s in December. So this has been an extraordinary stretch of time where the COVID numbers have been high enough to impact our operations. We're starting to get down to the point where, we're able to get to a bit more normal mode of operating as the cases have dropped off. And then just a different way to show it to you, this is the average number of COVID patients that we've had in the house each day. And once again, you can see this was last winter when things we thought were pretty high. And you can see how high we got in January. You can also see that we've just had this extended stretch of time where the numbers have been elevated. So those are my slides. The good news is it seems like the cases are coming down. That's allowing the hospital census to come down. That's allowing us to get back to a bit more normal mode of operation. Our team has been working hard every day to make the adjustments they need to make to allow us to do as much as we can. And again, credit to them. And thanks to all of you for your interest. I would be happy to answer any questions or take any comments. And hopefully that's a helpful overview of what's been going on with us in the last little stretch of time.
Mr. Charles, thank you so much. Is there any supervisor that would like to ask Mr. Charles a question at this time? Oh, Supervisor Magruder?
Yes, thank you for those statistics, and I'm glad to hear that it seems like capacity is increasing, I guess, in the hospital for other things outside of COVID. And so that 7 rolling day average, did I see that it was less than 50 cases?
Right. I think right now we're down in the low 30s. But yes, we're under 50. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Charles, that number has been since this week that the cases have dropped. Is it only this week?
Well, if you can see from the graph, they've been starting to come down for some period of time here. And so our hospital numbers have been moving downward as the community numbers have come down, but we've been on a downward trend now for, I'd say several weeks. Actually.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Whitman, I did see your hand.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Charles. I
Sure.
really appreciated your presentation at the General Forum also. And also at the Planning Commission, I watched that, so I've been seeing you up. So it's actually very apropos that we have you here tonight, because we also have on the agenda an item concerning our mask ordinance. And as you know, Patton Township is only the second municipality after State College that has a mask ordinance. And I actually assume that there are a number of people here tonight to speak on that. So I did notice on your opening slide that you did state very clearly that masking and distancing remain essential measures even with the vaccination. You know, it certainly is good news that cases in the hospital are going down. But could you comment on that, you know, just the general value of wearing a mask, even at this point when numbers are trending downward?
Sure. No, I'd be happy to do that. And I would say that, you know, I'm first of all, I'm not a physician. I work with a lot of them. I can kind of give you what the point of view would be. And we're coming at this more from a pure transmission perspective. So how does the virus spread? What are the mechanics of that? What are the effective things to do to limit the transmission of the virus? And in that context, you know, there really are three things that are the effective package for how, if you are interested in maximizing the protection to yourself or maximizing the protection to those around you, the three things you can do are get vaccinated and boosted, wear a mask, and maintain your distance. And that is just purely based on the science of how the virus is transmitted. It was the case for Alpha, it was the case for Delta, it was the case for Omicron. And so I think what you'd find us saying is that to the extent that you are interested in protecting yourself and protecting others, wearing a mask is a valuable tool for doing it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Elliot, do you have anything? No. All right, I would like to open it up to the public for public questions to Mr. Charles, if possible. If you would give your name and...
Yes, thank you. My name is Ron Nargi. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I represent the interests of an organization in Patton Township that is desperately trying to honor our local government authorities and care for our neighbors as we fight this horrible disease. Personally, I was thankful for your mask ordinance that was issued on January 19th. At the time, Omicron cases were spiking, and I don't think individuals were taking common sense measures and personal responsibility to minimize the spread while our hospitals and emergency rooms were getting overwhelmed. I myself am double vaxxed and boosted. I have lost dear friends to this disease and have seen many families devastated by it. And while I wish you instituted this ordinance a month earlier, I believe the Patton Township Board of Supervisors has made a critical error when writing this ordinance, and I hope it will be corrected this evening. Throughout the pandemic, our government has urged us to trust the science and follow the data. Let's do that. I'd like to start by referring to the exact words of your January 19th ordinance. Section 9, effective date. This ordinance shall take effect immediately upon adoption and shall remain in effect until the COVID transmission rate in Center County drops below the substantial threshold as defined by the U.S. Center for Disease Control, meaning that fewer than 50 cases, new weekly cases per 100,000 residents are being registered in Center County. According to the CDC data from the website that you cite in the ordinance, on December 1, before the Omicron wave hit Center County, weekly average new cases were at about 500. There was no mask mandate in Patton Township at that time. 7 weeks later, on January 18th, the day before your ordinance was instituted, new weekly cases in Center County soared to over 2,100 cases per week. That number would eventually crest to about 3,000 cases per week towards the end of January. The ordinance, as written, gave us a statistical trigger or milestone for when the ordinances will expire or no longer be in effect. Here it is again, fewer than 50 new weekly cases. So many of us are left wondering, what will the pandemic landscape have to look like before this mask mandate will be lifted? When have we had fewer than 50 cases in a week? Well, our CDC website actually provides us with that answer. 50 new cases per week, or about 7 new cases per day, was only reported in Center County for 7 short weeks between June 1st and July 21st. The middle of the summer, just about when the vaccines were readily available and people got both their shots, and it was before the Delta variant. So now we have arrived at the problem and my chief concern. Why was this bar set so high? Or more precisely, why was the threshold of cases set so low in the January 19th ordinance? Why wasn't it something like 500 cases a week, which is where we were at on December 1st, before the Omicron wave hit and there was no local mandate? Was it really this board's intention to have a local mask mandate in place until this disease is basically eradicated? Meanwhile, in the USA, we've seen cases drop from 800,000 cases per day to 60,000 per day. We are seeing densely populated states dropping their mask mandates altogether. We are seeing the whole country of England dropping all of their mandates. And yet here we are in Patton Township at this very hour under a local government mask mandate. I also find it interesting that none of your data sources and nothing that the doctor has shared or the CDC website take into account natural immunity. Omicron has burned through this community like a wildfire. Cases have dropped precipitously, not because of vaccines, not because of social distances or indoor mask mandates, but because 70 to 80% of this community has already had COVID and thankfully recovered from it. I'm calling on this board to take immediate action. Based on the current data today off of the CDC website, less than 165 cases per 100,000 residents, 7.65% positivity rate, only 16% of the hospital beds in use, only 1.9% of the ICU space in use. All of the above figures well below what we were experiencing before Omicron and before there was no mask mandate. I call upon this board to immediately rescind the January 19th mask mandate ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Might I just ask, Mr. Nargi, what group is it you represent, and what township do you live in?
I personally live in College Township, but I'm part of an organization that's here in Patton Township. I prefer not to say because I don't want to risk any retribution, retaliation, harassment.
No, you will not.
I know none of those things would happen, but my group isn't important. But what's important is that my group has tried to honor this mask mandate and respect the authority of this local government. And I feel like we were the only ones doing so.
Thank you
Well,
so
we
much
thank
for
you.
taking the
Yeah.
time.
Uh-huh.
Anyone else? Please give your name and your township, please, sir.
Good evening, my name's Ben Lee. I also represent an organization here in the community. I'm a local pastor here at a church. First, I just want to say how much I appreciate your work. Thanks so much for your care for our community and the long hours you put in and the hard decisions you have to make. I do appreciate it. Tonight, what I wanted to talk with you about is how I think what we've seen over these last few years and what we'll see into the future is how the continual required wearing of masks is slowly redefining what it means to be human. Masks reshape our view of human dignity. People have come to be marked as either carriers of contagion or as beings who are forced to live in communal isolation without the ability to interact and communicate with others as they're designed to. I don't know if you've experienced this, but I have. There's something deeply degrading in the fact that over these last few years, humans have been taught who they can interact with based on whether or not they're wearing a mask, and that certainly goes for whether you're wearing one or whether you're not. It is certainly one matter to encourage the wearing of masks when the numbers and cases were so high at the beginning of the year. They certainly were. We saw many problems in our local hospital, but it's another to require them indefinitely, and I think, as my friend has already made the case so well, that I'm afraid that's where we are. It seems to me highly unlikely that we will drop below 50 cases per week, at least for an extended period of time. I hope that we will, in the near future, drop below 50, but what will happen when the next wave hits? What happens when the next variant comes to our community, and how long will these masks mandates be in place? So this is what I would like you to consider. As we emerge from these last 2 years into a future that will undoubtedly have more COVID-19 variants, What our community needs is not more mandates from its leaders. We need leaders who can remind us what it means to be human. We need community leaders who can teach us once again that our neighbors are not carriers of contagion, and they are not people who are meant to function in isolation from one another. We are neighbors who exist in community with each other. And that means we need you as our leaders to remind us of that, and to encourage our people to live wisely, to live cautiously when they need to, but to love their neighbors and to continue interacting as neighbors. So my request to you is that you would rescind the mask mandate and encourage people to make their own decisions about how best to protect themselves and their families and their neighbors. Thank you for your time.
And Mr. Lee, what township do you live in?
I live in Stormstown, which is at Houston.
Okay. And
But,
your church is in Patton Township, and
Yes,
your parishioners are all from Patton Township?
a good chunk of them.
Thank you very much.
Pastor Lee, what is the name of your church, sir?
I prefer not to say, since
Oh.
I'm speaking as an individual and not on
Okay.
behalf of the church, but thank
No
you.
problem, thank you. Anyone else would like to speak on this? Thank you. Name, sir, and your,
It's all very mysterious. I'm also a part of a organization here in Patton Township that is connected with these other guys.
And
your name, sir?
And my name is Owen Hughes, and I live in Center County, or in Center Hall Borough, in the borough of. I really don't have much to add to what Ron and what Ben said, other than as I've kind of watched this unfold over the last 2 years, and especially over the last 6 to 8 weeks at our church, I've seen a large degree of discouragement among our people. I believe that I've sent some emails to the Board of Supervisors over the last couple of weeks, and I've started each one of these emails with thanking you, because you have a thankless job. You do a lot to help this community and protect this community, and I do believe that your intention with this mask mandate, I imagine that it was to help and protect our citizens and your constituents. But what I've watched is a deterioration of that and a mistrust of that because they have grown discouraged. One, we've already heard about the numbers. The numbers are coming down. The number seemed very unattainable, and now it is attainable. And I think Mr. Narji explained that well. I think second is this mask mandate was never going to be enforced. That's a problem. In my line of work, I talk with parents a lot. One thing that a parent should never do is give a consequence or a punishment that they were never going to act on. What it does is it breeds in a child distrust and purposelessness. And so I would like to just bring that up, that this was an ordinance of aspiration that was never going to be enforced, which really leads to a pointlessness to it and a discouragement. And lastly, the inconsistency that it was carried out within the township led to a lot of confusion for our people. As Mr. Narji said, very early on, our leadership said we want to honor this township. Not all of us live in this township, but we respect the authority that God has given you in this township. And so we wanted to respect that. It becomes increasingly difficult to do that, and it becomes incredibly difficult to maintain encouragement and encourage our people to do that. So, like the other guy said, and I would say the same thing, I strongly urge you to rescind this ordinance. And again, I want to thank you for all the hard work that you do put in to manage this township. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And thank you to all our speakers today. Mr. Charles, is he still here?
I am.
Any final words, sir?
No, I don't. I just thank you again for the opportunity to come and for your interest and again for your support of everybody at the health system. That is the loudest message I can deliver. Your thanks, your appreciation for our team who have really been on the front lines of doing that. That is so important, and thank you again for doing that and giving me the chance to come and talk.
And please extend our gratitude to all of the staff, that we truly appreciate them putting their lives on the line for all of us. And truly, the time they spend saving us. Thank you so much.
Absolutely,
right.
thank you.
Moving next on the agenda is CATA A route disruption. Doug, would you like to give us an update?
Madam Chairman, I just point out because we had speakers who spoke about the ordinance. After the CATA presentation and discussion, we will then, the next item on the agenda after that is discussion about the ordinance itself. So
We didn't open.
we ask your patience.
Thank you.
We will be spending time on that.
Thank you,
Sure.
Supervisor Torino. Doug?
Thank you. Last fall, CATA had to make some changes to their operations because, I'll let Luana Oliva talk about the exact reasons, but they had shortages of personnel that were impacting their service delivery. One of the changes they made was the elimination of the A route, which serves through the center of Park Forest Village. We started a correspondence with the CATA board at that point, asking what might be done. All that correspondence back and forth has culminated in they were invited to come address us. They are here tonight. We have Ms. Luana Oliva, General Manager, and Dr. John Spachalski, who's the Chair of the Board of Directors for CATA. And they're here to address the board, and I think Luana has at least one idea what we might be able to do to address this issue. So, thank you.
Welcome, both of you.
I wasn't sure, since the slide presentation, I wasn't sure if you'd want to put it up now or
Yeah,
not.
go ahead
but,
and put it up.
So what I thought I would do is just sort of to talk a little bit about where we are and maybe a couple updates that I can give you, and then also an idea that might help while we're in this situation. So the changes that we did make last year, we came back from trying to come back from COVID and then ran straight into a wall that was with staffing shortages that so many employers are facing these days. And those staffing shortages, how it impacted CATA was we started having what I call rolling brownouts, sort of similar to what happens with utilities when you don't have enough energy to keep those things going, which was very hard on the community as far as people not being able to rely on the service that was published, maybe not knowing that until the day they get up and try and use the service. So what we ended up doing was to come to the board with recommendations, a number of recommendations that sort of looked at what our existing staffing levels were. It also built in some upcoming retirements and those kind of things that we knew were going to come to try and take that sort of off of the service long enough so that people could at least know that whatever we had out there published, we could run. So that happened last November. And so some of the things that we're still seeing in the area is, and in particular, the route that Patton has been concerned about, the A route, is what we call a commuter route, which was 2 trips in the morning and 2 trips in the evening, sort of built around work times. And what we had seen in particular on those routes and why a number of those commuter routes ended up on the list to be considered by the board was that we weren't seeing the ridership come back there, and even now we're still seeing that a lot of employers have not yet brought their people back to work. Or some of the things we're hearing is maybe the person's in the office 2 days a week. So that's why we're just not seeing that sort of demand on those commuter services that we looked at. So right now, with what we're seeing as far as being able to bring on new employees and the time it takes for us to get folks trained up, we're looking that these temporary reductions will likely stay in place through our service. Usually about mid-August is when we then do our fall service changes. And then what I did want to also mention is we have been pulling out all the stops on recruitment, probably just like you're seeing everybody else do. If there's something we can think of, we've been trying it. Some of the things that we've been doing is, we have signing bonuses for some of the, the positions where we're really looking for a number of people. We have referral bonuses for our own employees because we find that some of the best people we get are referrals from our own employees that understand the job. We've been doing rolling job fairs where we take a bus out. What we find is a lot of our employees come from outside the area and drive in, so we'll take a bus out to a community and advertise it, maybe have a radio remote, where we use the bus as a place to do recruitment, where we can interview people, they can fill out, we have a computer, they can fill out an application. So there's a number of things that we've been doing trying to increase our recruitment. Things were still very, very slow. But since the holidays, we're actually seeing a pickup, and I don't know if others are seeing that, but we're seeing more applications since the holidays, so that's a plus. So, next slide. So upcoming activities around service. So we're continuing to look at the service and trying to match it to where we think we might end up being with recruitment. And so typically what happens for us is for the fall, we'll be doing our service planning decisions as part of our budget process, which we are heading into right now. And we're also looking at everything just to say, okay, if we maybe can't bring this back, can we bring some version of something back in order to bring service back into the community? And all of that weighed against those staffing shortages. With how we will be approaching that with coming to the board with service suggestions. We also believe that we'll likely be ready to do public hearings on any of that in April. And of course, we'll be doing a lot of promotion on that, but also if you can help us get the word out when that time comes, we'd really appreciate it. So one of the things that I wanted to just talk about is a possible short-term option that Patton could think about, if we go ahead and put the next slide up, is our van pool program. So in the past, our van pool program has predominantly been used by folks that live outside the area but have jobs here in the area. In particular, van pools have predominantly been for folks that live outside the area but come to Penn State to work, and the prisons is another place, a lot of the employees there. So typically we hadn't had people use it within the service area. But what we wanted to talk about just really quickly is that not knowing how many people you may be hearing from, we have not heard from many people, but perhaps with the folks that you've heard from, that this might be an option that could be looked at to fill the gap in between. So the regulations is in order for it to be a van pool under our program and for us to be able to use any subsidies to help with it, you have to have at least 7 people. That's the federal, and that includes the driver. The total cost per month for that van pool is approximately $1,272 plus gas. And then through January 30th, and then it sort of changes, and I can get you more information after the fact, but through January 30th, then CATA would subsidize $810 towards that $1,272 per month. And then what happens after that is the group then splits the cost, the remaining cost amongst the group that's part of the van pool program. And talking to Doug, that might be something too, depending on what Patton decides to do. If they'd like to pursue something like that, it might be something that they would be willing or wanting to help with as well. So I did want to offer that as a possible short-term option. And so with that, I will turn it over for whatever questions
All right.
you may
I want
have.
to thank you so much. Are there any supervisors that have questions at this time?
Yeah, we've got it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Supervisor Ellie Abrams.
You were mentioning January. Is this like next January or? January is over already.
As far as, I'm not sure which one.
You were talking about some funding or changes in January, but
I think
today is February 23rd, so is that?
June, I think, is
Oh,
maybe.
June, all right.
Okay, yeah, as far as the funding for, right now, the subsidy is set at a certain amount through June.
Oh, all right.
I can get you numbers for past that, but I figured I wouldn't weigh you down with a bunch of numbers right now unless you guys were actually interested in
I must
looking
have
at
heard
that.
I must have heard it wrong because I thought you said January, but
Sorry.
maybe you didn't.
Any other supervisor? Oh,
Are there any special qualifications needed for the driver? Like a
I'm-
chauffeur's license or?
No, they just have to have a driver's license
Okay.
for the van.
Okay.
But yeah,
Class
the-
C.
Supervisor Whitman?
So if I understand your figures correctly, trying to think, I don't have that up right now. Let me just, I think you said about 1,200 a month, and CATA could come in and subsidize it at
about 800.
so that brings it down to about 460
Plus gas.
plus gas. So-
Plus gas.
But then divided by 7 people, if we get 7 people, and divide that again by 20, because there's 20 days in a month. So I'm just trying to calculate the daily charge
Oh.
per rider. Sorry about that, I should have said that.
Yeah, that one, I don't have a calculator on
That's
that.
what I know you don't, but I just want to make sure I'm on, it's about $3.50 a day
I'm
Per-
looking at
per
60.
rider if you have a full van. But the charge for the van would be the same regardless of how many riders you have, so it benefits.
Correct,
everyone.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the more people, then the cost is split.
And then who organizes the van?
So the people who want to use the van organize it. They just, they find the volunteer driver, and then a lot of the way that things are done is also typically set up by the group. Like, we have some groups that everybody pays towards the cost. We have other groups where the driver doesn't get charged because they're volunteering to not only drive, but do the required paperwork.
Okay, all right.
Supervisor Magruder, you have any questions at this time?
I did not.
I have a few. Luana, the list, is it a first come, first serve
For the van,
for the riders that are,
it would just be a group of people coming together
okay?
and organizing and telling us that they want to be a van pool.
Okay, do we have an estimate how many vans would be needed?
This would be completely up to you as Patton to decide what you
How
want to
many
do with
vans?
this. We,
Okay.
like I said, we haven't heard from a lot of folks, so I don't know that we're talking a lot of vans.
Do we know how many riders we had before this disruption?
I don't have that number on you. I can find that. It was very low, you know, at least during COVID, it's been very low.
Okay. Mark, you are the Patton Township rep. Would you happen to know those numbers? Sorry to put you on the spot.
It's like, I didn't bring that with me.
No,
sorry.
no problem. I kind of caught everybody off guard.
For CNET and for people on, Mark, can you come up to the podium?
Yes,
Sorry to
please.
Make you share, but
And
Yeah, otherwise people
introduce
on
yourself
Zoom won't be
so
able
our viewers know who you are.
Hi, I'm Mark Parfit. I'm the Patton Township CATA rep. According to the information I had right prior to the discontinuation of the A route, it averaged about 148 weekly riders.
So that's,
Thank
again,
you.
so that would be total, so that could be, you know, you divide it by 5 and then by 2 to try and get a feel for how many people.
Right.
Oh, gotcha.
so about 15 riders a day,
And that's if those were regular riders versus,
yeah.
Okay.
LaWanda, are you having problems getting our ridership back since the disruption?
so we're slowly building back up. I can tell you that COVID overall impacted university towns sooner and harder than others, like urban systems. So a lot of the urban systems have brought back between 65 and 70% of their ridership, and we're still hovering somewhere about 55%, I think. Trying to pull numbers out of the top of my head, so don't completely quote me on that. Like I said, I think some of the biggest impacts for us right now are that a lot of the places haven't brought people back to work. There's a lot of remote work going on, and it's something that we're going to have to consider and think about as we move forward with whatever comes out of COVID.
Can I make a suggestion, if it's possible, Doug? Is it possible that our township can also help with the advertisement at our meetings that CATA is looking for drivers and other staff members during our meetings?
Yeah, we can do,
And if you could word it in the fact that they would need to have a group of people. We usually don't go out and like find everybody. It's usually that a group of people come to us and that's how they're organized.
Well, if you could just write us what you would like for us to kind of get the word out, and not only for us, but for our colleagues in the other municipalities. Since we are a part of COG, we also would like to expand that. It's, Doug, you think it's possible?
yeah, I think, if we're looking for a van pool that would serve the Park Forest area, we could also look into the Park Hills area of Ferguson Township too, see if there's anybody interested.
I'm looking at more at the drivers as a whole, like bus drivers and,
Oh, yeah, we can do
Oh, you're
advertising.
talking, oh, I'm sorry,
Yes.
I misunderstood. You're talking about
Yeah.
recruitment in
I don't
general.
know
Right,
if people
yes.
that are looking for jobs at CATA are gonna come to our website or our meeting, but we can do that.
yeah, at least
But I don't think we're,
I would like
we're gonna
that,
be a minor player in that effort.
I would like that word to get out. We want to thank you, and I want to thank CATA board members for taking the time out to address the residents' concern at the CATA A route disruption. And I have a personal message. I would like to personally express to the CATA board that the Patton Township Board of Supervisors truly understand the crisis at CATA with the shortage of drivers and staff. I would like to reiterate that the Patton Township Board of Supervisors are not the enemy. When we send a correspondence or a inquiry, it's only for additional information for our board to be able to respond accurately to the needs of our residents, and that we are working with CATA to find a solution, if possible, for the disruption of the A route. This solution to this issue may not be immediately resolved, but at least with this presentation tonight and with our board representative Mark Parfit, who's doing an excellent job representing Patton Township, shows that our board will continue to work together with CATA in unity, understanding, and respect to meet the needs of our residents. Thank you again to CATA board and CATA staff for the dedicated services they provide to all of our communities. Thank you so much. Supervisor Whitman, did you have something?
I did. I didn't realize you were going to make kind of closing remarks.
Oh, well, go.
Oh. So I actually have a question about the microtransit. I was talking to Mark Parker about that. We had some back and forth trying to brainstorm and think of options in the Park Forest area. And Mark also brought to my attention the zero-emission van that is now available, happens to be through Ford. So it'd be kind of an interesting thing if the board was interested in pursuing microtransit or finding out more about it. And for those of you who don't know, or the audience, it already exists in Bellefonte and in Bollesburg. Am I correct on that?
Yes, as far as microtransit?
Right.
Yes, the service of microtransit, yes.
Right, and if in fact just looking ahead, that might be one of the ways that we move. You know, instead of having the regular buses, and it would, you know, my understanding is, we don't have it in our budget to buy a van, but, nor do you probably. I understand they're about 50 grand, but it is a completely electric, no emission, it's zero emission van, seats up to 7 people, I believe, or depending on what length you get. So I just thought it might be worth thinking outside the box
Okay.
and exploring that if we could somehow make that work, put it on our long-range plan for another year. I'm not certain about the calendar here, but I'm just throwing out an idea.
All right, well, we thank you for that.
And I can get with Mark to better understand the idea that you're talking about
Awesome, yeah.
to see.
Great, thank you so much, Lana.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, would you like a comment, or Mark?
I'm done.
LaWanda, thank you so
Oh,
much.
I wasn't sure.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Elliot, I'm sorry.
It's all right, I don't want you to hurt your neck. I just wanted to 100% endorse what you said. I think it was a very good message.
Thank you.
I think I caught it all. It's, I'm not very good at shorthand, but I think I
Oh,
caught it
no,
all.
no problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll give you a copy.
I'll just add my final thoughts. The bus operator shortage is definitely a real thing. I think nobody's questioning that, and CATA has certainly, they're trying everything they can. We get updates every month. They truly are trying. My concern when I first brought this to the board was the issue of Patton Township as a member municipality receiving a reduction in service while non-member municipalities were not. My question at the time was, what is the benefit of being a member if in a time of crisis you don't get some type of prioritization? I appreciate that solutions are being shared. The van pool service, to be honest, I don't think anybody's going to sign up for that. Van pools traditionally are for distant drivers. I don't think we're going to see a lot of people form a van pool to drive 3 to 5 miles to campus. Also, we know Park Forest, the riders in Park Forest are what we call choice riders. They are in a fortunate enough position that they don't need the bus. They have, for the most part, their own private ways to get to places. They are not dependent on public transit. However, why those choice riders are so important is because they help support the overall grid, which makes public transit more sustainable. We never make a profit. That's not the goal of public transportation, but the choice riders help subsidize the people who truly do need the transit. Van pools are even less convenient. Our competition in this town is convenience. People are willing to pay for convenience. You see that, the way they park downtown instead of taking a bus. We really battle with convenience. They will pay whatever it is to be more convenient. Van pools are even less convenient because we're now putting the responsibility of organizing and finding other riders, and the whole process puts more work on the riders. They're just going to say no, forget it. I'm going to drive. So my concern with the length of time we're taking to find a solution to this is that we're going to lose Park Forest as a community that supports public transportation. And my concern is we will not get them back. So again, I do appreciate that solutions are now being talked about, but I personally do not think van pooling is an appropriate substitution for regular public transit service to that community.
But you think, follow up, but you think microtransit might be something worth looking into?
Yeah,
opposed to
I mean, we're seeing really good results in Bellefonte and Bollesburg, and Park Forest has similar commuting habits to perhaps Harris Township. I personally think it should be looked at. I've expressed that to the CATA board, have not really received much support on that, but microtransit is definitely the future of public transit in areas where there's not enough density to support big 40-foot buses, or where it's just not economically or environmentally feasible to keep running buses that for the majority of the time are running with very few people on them. I know Ellie and I have talked about, Ambleside and Wilderness and some of those developments and how it might also work well, not just in Park Forest, but the areas that lost service when the G route was cut back and then discontinued.
Thank you, Mark.
I mean,
Manager,
if we want to talk about microtrans, I mean, is there a model that we should be looking at, we should be sitting down and talking about, that we can all work together to work on? I mean, that's part of the issue, is we from this side of the table, don't know how to get there.
Yeah, I think, and
We want to learn and we want to participate.
I will stress that I'm putting on my Patton Township hat here. I'm not speaking on behalf of the CATA Board of Staff, but that would have to come from all of you. A real strong united show of support that Patton Township wants microtransit in some of these communities and formally communicate that to our CATA board. I'm one vote of 5, so I need help convincing my peers that Patton Township really wants this and is serious about it.
if you can get us, Mark, that information so we can research it, Doug?
Yeah, I think the issue is, I
We're
mean,
talking across purposes here.
Yeah.
We want info. We want models to follow,
we
so.
want somebody to say,
Concrete.
yeah, if Patton Township put up $10 million, we could do it. Maybe that's not the cost. Maybe it's $10,000, but somewhere between those two numbers, right?
Yeah, right
So
now.
what is that number, and who can provide us that number?
Okay, so right now, the microtransit is not a separate line item on the CATA formula. It's being covered through the CATA general budget because of its status as a pilot program. We do have, and Luana, please correct me if I'm wrong, we do have a prototype new formula. I don't know if that's been shared with you yet, but we could potentially run ridership numbers through that formula and get an estimate. Is that feasible?
What I can do is, and so just as a reminder, so local match is not, local match is tied to state.
I'm talking
Yeah.
about something beyond.
Yeah, I just
our
wanna make
member
sure.
contribution, that obviously if it was feasible, we'd be doing it today, right? If it was financially feasible,
And it's not just
And-
financially feasible,
or if you had
it's,
drivers or something, but.
yeah, we don't have, so we have two separate, like, we have a
Well, I
contract with
guess
them.
that we need, how many buckets do we need to fill to make this happen? And if one's drivers and one's money and one's something else, we need to know what each of those buckets are and how much each of those buckets hold.
First of all, I'll say, we did hear you. You have already told us that you're very interested in microtransit, and we did hear you.
Okay.
It's just, this is not something I can just do overnight.
Oh,
So just know that we have heard you, we definitely have. As far as I was gonna just comment that there's a meeting upcoming where there's some things with local match that we have to revisit. So we're in the process of talking to municipal managers to make sure we're taking the right approach with that. So, I can't tell you a number. It's like part of what we've been doing with microtransit, so we were with the first pilot we did in Bellefonte, we were one of, and I can't remember, it was like 40 cities in the United States that tried this as the pilot. So what we've been doing is sort of trying it to see how it works. So the first one was, we tried it in an area that was built more like a small city. So lots of the street structures were much like a city. Harris, so that was a sort of a little city that was way out from a service. With Harris, what we're trying it is a more rural area closer into the service to see how it will work. So I can't tell you exactly because we're experimenting. Everybody in the country that's doing microtransit is experimenting with how will this work, for instance, in Patton, then you're talking about, maybe an area of Patton that is right on top of very heavy service. So how do we build it? How do we make it work? And so we're really studying a lot of different things and looking at things. So I guess the answer is I can't tell you a number right now because I don't have the ability to stand it up yet, so. But I'll be happy to share as I know more and as I'm talking to the
Well,
board.
phrase it this way, the number one priority of the Patton Township Board of Supervisors was to institute microtransit in Park Forest. I mean, could we start our own transportation authority? Could we just go out and buy a bus and start it? We can't, I don't think we can do that, right?
Yeah,
So we're almost by default have to work with CATA.
and all I'm saying is, we've heard you, we're working on things. It's just, I can't just do it overnight. We're working through some things. We've definitely heard you, we're trying to respond as quickly as we can get some information together, so.
Luana, what I want you to take from this board is that we want to work with CATA. If nothing else, that you hear from me tonight, as a writer and as one of your cheerleaders, we are here to work with you, however it takes. We are willing and able to work with you, give you time, give your board time, work with your wonderful staff, and especially your wonderful drivers. I can't say enough to John. Your staff at CATA is amazing, and your board is amazing. But we want to be on the same page, and we can't do that if we don't trust that we want to work together. So tonight, I hope if we don't do anything but get the message across that we're here to work with you to resolve that issue and to let our residents know that their needs and concerns, we hear you and we're going to work together to get this resolved. So, thank you. Supervisor Abrams, and then
In other words,
Supervisor.
our interest in this is not transitory.
Yes,
Supervisor.
we recognize that.
Supervisor Magruder.
Yes, and just for clarity, y'all are experimenting with the micro transit. Y'all are aware of our interest in bringing micro transit to parts of Patton Township. And so I hear you saying y'all hear us. However, when you talk about studying and examining, that's for all these other projects, I guess, that are happening. And then you'll sort of like get to.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
Okay.
we've heard you and we're looking at things. I just am not in a position yet to be able to give you answers.
Oh, okay, I guess, yeah, I'm just trying to get clarity about, we're looking into things, what that actually means. If it's just, again, y'all are experimenting, y'all are seeing how those things play out, and then you'll sort of like apply that to potentially.
So like the Bellefonte project that is now Bellefonte and Pleasant Gap, that's still a pilot going, and now we've started the pilot last year in Bollesburg. So it's not like we're going to be done with one before we start something else. We're just looking at some of these things like, can it even work? In this close to fixed route, can it even work? Those are kind of the things that we're looking at right now.
And so, yeah, I guess then, I think what Supervisor Whitman was talking about then is that, I guess, more clarity then, and as this process is unfolding with these sort of like pilot programs, us just having a little bit more clarity so that we're up to speed for when you're like, okay, this is definitely going to work, or it's looking like it's going to work, and how can we apply that then now to Patton Township? We're already up to speed, and so we're not having to go back and do all this research to try to figure out how did y'all actually get here. So I guess just more clarity with the process as the process is unfolding, what these other places might be helpful for us.
Any other
Thank you so
supervisors?
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
John. Mark? All right. Moving next. Give me a second. All right. Next on the agenda is the amendments to the COVID-19 face covering ordinance. Doug, would you give us
Yes,
an
at the January 26th meeting, the board proposed including a mask exemption for places of worship. That ordinance was originally approved on January 19th. So we have provided a new updated version of the ordinance where we've inserted places of worship as one of the exemptions under section 3, and also provided a couple of links under section 9, the effective date, linking back to the CDC information on the substantial rate of, what do they call it, substantial rate of transmission, being, as we talked about, as was talked about previously by some of our speakers, at that threshold of 50 new weekly cases per 100,000 residents in the county. So with that, the agenda, at the last meeting, there was some discussion back and forth. Supervisor Magruder has provided a statement, position statement on the matter that was also included. And there was some discussion with the solicitor, who was going to give us an update on relevant case law. Ms. Dupuy, are you with us here? Hello, Betsy.
She's here. Let's see.
Not seeing Ms. Dupuy, but maybe we go ahead and take some public comments, and we'll see if Betsy comes back online with us.
Is she having problems coming back online? Well, do I want to open it up to the supervisors? Do you have any comment at this time? All right, Supervisor Abrams and Supervisor Magruder.
I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other, except I do think that it's going to be pretty soon when we're going to be able to get rid of it.
All right. Supervisor Magruder?
And so I guess my question is,
No, Ms. Dupuy's here.
Supervisor
yeah,
Magruder.
my question is going to be, is there room today for us, given, you know, we had some public comments talking about rescinding the ordinance, given, you know, the threshold that we set is below that. Will we be talking about rescinding that today, or do we have to have a motion or something to?
Is it? I don't think the threshold's
I-
below that.
I thought we were told that it was below 50 cases.
No, that was admissions to the hospital, I think.
No.
No,
Oh, it is below 50?
It's below 50.
it's been for a few weeks now.
But an average.
Mm-hmm.
Can you pull up the?
Okay, thanks.
So the threshold is, so the Centers for Disease Control classifies the rate of transmission in 4 categories. High, substantial, moderate, and low. We're currently in, I can't remember if we're currently in the high. So the threshold between, I think, between substantial and moderate is 50 new cases per 100,000 residents per week. So there's about 160,000 residents in Center County. So 1.6 times 50 gets you about 80. So divide that by 7. So you get about 11 cases per day would be 11 new cases per day. Would be where that threshold is. So that was what the board inserted into the ordinance on the 19th.
Right, but I thought
the gentleman from Mount Nittany had showed the graph, and it said on a weekly basis of new cases, it was under 50.
For the hospital.
Mr. Nargi was right, the current number for today from the CDC is 164.4 new cases per week per 100,000 residents
All
in
right.
Center County, so.
So we're still not at the threshold.
No, we're at 164, the threshold is 50.
That's,
All right.
but Sudani did mention that, he was talking about the beds, Mr. Charles, that the number of beds at the hospital had dropped. Maybe, okay. I thought the same thing when I heard it, sorry.
Sorry for the confusion, but we have our solicitor online.
I'm here, sorry, must have had a technical glitch. I couldn't click on any buttons. They're one of those connection things. I can answer the question pretty quickly and just say that there is not a lot of case law out there on masking. I think I mentioned that before. It has largely been, as you probably are all well aware, in the vaccine context. And so I don't think there's anything specific that addresses the questions you've asked. But I do think we have to always be cognizant that places of assembly have a great deal of rights under the First Amendment, and we also have statutes that protect religious assembly, and so I know that was one of the questions. I think I'm not saying don't do it, but I also think that the language that is in the current, or what I should say, the approved ordinance, matches what was in your prior ordinance related to all of that, and also matches what had been in the borough's ordinance, which I cannot tell you if it's still in place or not. So, and so essentially these ordinances were silent as to the issue. I know there are folks in the audience who are concerned about that, and I think the board has to make a decision as to how it wants to apply. My impression in reading these ordinances, that is the original patent ordinance, the original ordinance that Ferguson, really all of the center region municipalities had, this is way back when, as well as those outside of the center region, was that they were focused more on businesses than they were on places of assembly or schools, because of course schools were already regulating themselves and PDE had regulations on them. So again, you're in an area where there's not a lot of legal guidance out there, except that you need to know that they have different rights as a place of assembly or as a religious institution under federal statutes.
Great. Thank you so much, Betsy. As I'm looking out, Ms. Jones.
Yes. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, good, thanks. I wasn't intending to make any kind of statement tonight until I was watching it on the line stream, and then I got onto the Zoom meeting too late to offer any comment. But I just wanted to point out that I think that if we don't keep this ordinance in place, we're forgetting about all the kids that are 5 and under who don't have the ability to get shots yet, although they may have that ability by the end of next month or sometime early in April. And my concern about this is that if I go out to Walmart shopping with my grandchildren, and nobody there in Walmart is wearing a mask, then in that case, I have no control over whether my grandchildren might be exposed to the virus at all. And I listened carefully to what the other speakers were saying, because they all had good points. But I also do know that from a religious point of view, I go to St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in downtown State College. Christ is always talking about how important the little ones are, and the little ones will be inheriting the kingdom of heaven. And we want to be good Christians. We should be like little children. He always cared for the little children. I'm afraid they're sort of getting lost in the shuffle if we don't keep this ordinance in place until the time when we have 50 or less new cases. So I just wanted to add that in before you folks have a chance to vote on what to do. And that's it.
All right, thank you so much. Supervisor Abrams?
The comment was made that the ordinance is somewhat aspirational, and yeah, sure. I walk around in Wegmans, and so I'm wearing a mask because I don't see any problem with it. It's just something that we have to do right now, and so I'm doing it. But if I see someone that's not, I'm not going to call the police and have them come out. It's just like when we have signs out there that say aggressive driving is being enforced. Well, that doesn't mean that the officers are going to be following each and every car while that sign's up there, pulling people over. I trust that some people are still going to stop at red lights when they see them. I trust that people are still going to wear seat belts even though they're supposed to, and that they'll continue to do that. But we're not going to look in every car, see if that's done. Some people can still get a ticket. So yes, it's aspirational, but I think it serves a purpose that it tells people that yes, it's okay to go do this. You should do it. We're not going to arrest you for it, and leave it at that. And so I just don't see the big deal. I mean, when my wife and I visited Taiwan, where our son lives, we saw this even 15 years ago. People that have colds and things like that just wear them as a matter of course, and they don't think anything about it. But each country and each thing, I understand the thing about freedom, but I still don't think, to me, it's no big deal. You just put it on and you're wearing it. But if it is a big deal to you, okay, don't. Still not going to get arrested.
All right, Supervisor Whitman.
I just have a procedural question. So what's on our agenda is actually looking at the amendment of the existing ordinance. Is it even possible for us to discuss rescinding the ordinance at this point, or would we have to have a public hearing for that? Not that I'm suggesting one way or another, I just
No.
want to...
Typically, it will take an ordinance to modify an existing ordinance. So if you wanted to change that effective date or when it becomes ineffective, yes, you would have to do that by ordinance.
But I guess the question I'm asking
Can you
is-
discuss it? You can discuss anything, you just can't take action on it.
Right.
We can't act on it tonight, so, okay. All right, then, yeah.
Supervisor Torino, do you have any comments?
Well, I think we've got enough information. We've already had public comments. Unless there are any additional public comments from people who haven't spoken to us yet, I think it's time that we have a motion so we can officially be discussing the amendment, the
All right.
proposed amendment, or those two changes. One is exempting places of worship, and the second amendment is the adding that one word new to that last section on effective date. So
Would you like to
for the
make a
purpose
motion?
of continuing our discussion, officially, I would move that we adopt the two proposed changes to this ordinance number 2022-623.
Is there a second? Discussion. Supervisor Magruder, would you like to speak? Supervisor Abrams?
I think it's okay to go ahead and do this. I just, the point was raised earlier about whether our threshold makes sense or not, or should be changed. And we're not going to be discussing that now because that's not in the motion. But I think we should look into that and see if whether our practice is too strict or not. That's a good question, so let's see if we can get some information about that.
Supervisor Trevino, I saw your hand.
I think actually it is a legitimate thing to discuss, because the motion is to adopt those two changes. And we could say, well, there's still a problem with the wording of the effective date. Not the effective date, but what is it? The
Threshold.
the threshold for the termination of this ordinance. So I think that's still valid. Now, I would not be in favor of just picking a number out of the air and say, well, 50 seems too severe, let's make it 75 or make it 100. That there's no, there'd be no basis for that, other than it's random.
Right.
The way the wording is, it's based upon a CDC definition of substantial spread threshold. So we'd have to look at the other definitions and say, well, maybe we want to go to a less severe threshold that the CDC has established. I understand Mr. Narji's comments. We're still in the downward slope of the Omicron new cases. I think it's really too early for us to say, let's change the threshold now. But the other point I would make, Mr. Narji, is that this board meets every 2 weeks, basically. At our next board meeting, someone could propose that we could go ahead and rescind the ordinance now. We, have a new ordinance that we'll go ahead and rescind it now before this particular threshold is reached. Because looking at all the curves, and there doesn't seem to be a new variant, blah, 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 maybe it's at that time we can justify rescinding the ordinance. Today, Mr. Bernardi, I'm not ready for that yet, to rescind the ordinance today. So that's my position.
Any other supervisor? Supervisor Abrams?
I think the threshold is one of these things that was developed by the scientists as the best case to adopt. But I think the transmission is much different where I grew up in Philadelphia, where everybody's close to each other, and say if we were in Wyoming, where nobody's close to each other except for Cheyenne and maybe Sheridan. So these are all it's somewhat guesswork and scientific thoughts. And so we picked a number. I don't think we should change it to any other number right now because we don't know what that number should be.
Supervisor Magruder, before we move forward on this?
I guess my question, I guess maybe we need to be talking about this after we do the, vote on these particular changes, but if we were to try to have a motion to create a new ordinance for the next meeting, to vote on the next meeting, rescinding this current one, do we have to establish the specific number right today, or can we, over the next, few days, try to get a number so that we can then include that when those advertisements goes out, so that we can vote on that?
Well, the board needs to make those determinations in a public meeting, so you're really limited to doing that today.
So we won't be able to make a motion until,
We have a specific number that we want, because there seems to be energy around shifting that number.
not only shifting the number, but the public, the public hearing that we have to have. We have to have a public hearing to change.
Yeah.
If we're proposing an
If
ordinance,
we're
but not if we're
proposing it.
rescinding something.
But we're not there yet.
So we're not proposing it now, so we
No.
should just vote on what we have.
We're voting on what we have right now. Okay?
Okay.
It's all Supervisor Whitman.
So while we're still discussing this, so I did check with the borough today. They have the same stipulation that we do, the same threshold. And their ordinance is still in place. And I said, are you getting complaints from citizens about the ordinance? And they said, no, we haven't had any complaints. So I think maybe Patton is not used to, or citizens of Patton are not used to this. I think the borough is very used to these ordinances, for whatever reason. I like the phrase that Mr. Charles used, which is you wear a mask to show your concern for if you want to protect yourself and protect others, you wear a mask. And I also want to comment on the exempting places of worship. I think, I would like to see it not specifically exempt, but also leave it up to the, as Betsy DePuy suggested, that it is self-regulated, which is not to say that that I propose an ordinance that is not enforced, but I do like to use the example of traffic speeds. One of the issues that we get constantly before this board is that of people not obeying traffic speeds. And it's a major problem in top trees, and we've tried all sorts of traffic calming. It's also an issue out on Circleville Road. And we don't expect our police force to be out there, on Top Trees Avenue 24/7 or on Circleville 24/7. Nor do we expect them to be inside Walmart or a store enforcing. I do not think it's right to call out one organization. Why don't we call out a private preschool, saying they're exempt from it? But I don't see any reason for, a home, a house of worship, to, among their family, to decide what they will do. And I don't know if it's correct for me to say this or even appropriate, but I do not think that will be a problem for anyone who chooses to wear or not wear a mask in a house of worship. But the minute we call out and say that that is exempt, then I feel that we are maybe obliged to go through and list other places that are exempt. And I think therein lies a can of worms.
Okay, what's on the table right now is a motion. I'm calling for a vote.
Well, can I just clarify one thing? The motion actually is to accept both changes,
Yes.
and I will say that I would accept one of the changes, but not the other. So my vote will reflect that. I would vote it down this time, and I would propose that we vote on them separately. So I'm just announcing that.
Okay. So you're making the suggestion to vote?
Well, we have to vote now because we have a motion on the floor and a second. And the motion on the floor right now is to accept both proposed changes, one of which is to insert the word new, so it's 50 new weekly cases, which I'm in agreement with.
All right.
But I am not in agreement with the other, which I just having trouble calling up here right now. The
Exempt from
Yeah.
places of worship.
exactly, houses of worship are exempt from. For some reason, it's not jumping out. I apologize.
So on the table, we have a motion, I'm sorry, Supervisor Abram.
I don't know how to vote on this, because in a way, by saying anything about a religious organization, we're passing a regulation about it. And I don't think that's our business.
So you just say, yeah, I think that's what I was saying.
It was.
Oh, okay, sorry, I just.
But I think that the people that belong to the church or synagogue or mosque, maybe they can decide among themselves what the rules are, and that's what will be done internally. But that's still not something government does.
So you're saying exactly what Supervisor Whitman's saying and Supervisor Magruder has said.
Yeah.
All right. Doug, can we break this up into two different motions?
No, ma'am.
So,
If one goes down, the other one can be introduced.
You need to vote on the motion, on the ordinance that was advertised for discussion.
All right.
2022-623R that have been discussed, the two changes.
All right. Again, I'm calling for a motion.
no, we have a
We have a
motion.
motion on the table
calling for a vote.
Vote, I'm sorry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye?
All opposed, say no.
Nay?
Two. Ellie?
Let's do a roll call.
All right.
Okay,
You have to vote?
Yes.
yes. All right, Supervisor Whitman,
No.
Supervisor Trevino,
Yes.
Supervisor Abrams,
No.
Supervisor Magruder.
No.
Supervisor Rob.
No. Now,
Can we make a motion even, this is, even though it hasn't been advertised, can I make a motion that we accept the addition of the word new? Or just
If the question is, can that be
voted
a
on?
change that can be offered at the next meeting, the answer is yes. If
Okay.
it's something you can do tonight, the answer is no.
Okay, thank you. So can I direct the board to set up
Yes.
another date for public hearing? Or direct the staff?
yes.
Well, let's have a motion in a second and discuss that and make sure everybody's on
Supervisor
board.
Whitman,
So moved.
are you making the motion?
Yeah, that's, in that motion, yeah.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion.
So just to clarify for us in the audience and everybody, we're talking about the only proposed change to the current amendment, the current ordinance is just to add that word new into that final section. Is that what we're voting on?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Oh,
Yeah.
Supervisor Abrams?
I think we're all proving here that there's somebody that actually indicated what the best way to stop the aging process was. And that's to force it to work its way through Congress. That's what we're doing here now.
Supervisor Magruder?
So are we done talking about the inclusion of this this language?
Right, well, there's a motion on the floor.
Okay.
It's been seconded.
Okay, well, my discussion is based on a different topic, but related to rescinding this order, so I'm fine with moving forward with voting
All
for
right.
this.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? So moved, it passed. Doug?
So we'll have that on the agenda for the March 9th meeting.
Madam Chair.
All right, next on the agenda.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Supervisor Magruder.
And so just for clarity, we would have to wait until the next meeting to make a motion to, for example, rescind this order or shift the threshold higher, correct?
Doug?
Correct.
And so in that meeting, we would then need to have a specific number that we would want to then make that motion for the ordinance rescinding or shifting that
Right.
threshold. Okay. And so for the individuals in the community who have asked about us rescinding this order, unfortunately, I think just bureaucracy stuff, like based on the rules, it takes us time to be able to actually heed your sort of, your request. And so we hear that, and it will be talked about next week, and we'll try to move as fast as we can. Either way.
Not next meeting, not next week.
Sorry, next meeting.
Thank you. Supervisor,
Point of privilege to address the board, or?
just a minute, sir. Supervisor Abrams?
This actually moves the whole discussion into a different category, I think, than we started with. Because like if there was a flood or something, we're allowed to enact emergency actions much more quickly than waiting for another meeting. We can declare another meeting, or we can declare an emergency. So what we're actually saying is that this isn't one of those,
Doug?
isn't it?
Well, I would say that so far you've followed the normal procedure to enact ordinances through this process for the last 4 weeks at least, or 5 or 6 weeks. So I think you'd have a hard time making a case that today it's an emergency where it wasn't a month
Yeah.
ago.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that but if it were an emergency, we could act more quickly than we do for this.
Under some circumstances, whether this is an emergency or not, I mean, it's not a state declared emergency. We haven't
Exactly,
declared
exactly.
any local emergency either, so.
Right.
All right. Sir, I must ask you for a minute. So can we have public input?
Yes, we could.
All right, sir, please feel free.
Thanks. My name's Doug Sharp. I'm with the same church. I just want to say, Mr. Magruder, if you think the rules are torturous, you ought to come to our denomination's General Assembly sometime. Robert's rules weaponized is not pretty. So, and I just wanted to say, Mr. Abrams, I miss greatly the big book of weather. I hope you are well, and I've missed hearing you regularly.
It's here. I'm just not reading it from it.
Thank you all for your clarification as regards the self-regulation of houses of worship. I believe strongly that it's very important that we all continue to acknowledge the separate spheres of authority granted to ecclesial and civil authority. I'm a little disheartened that it's not particularly codified in law. I do think that there is a very good reason to make an exception for houses of worship without extending that to other bodies, because there is a distinct difference in houses of worship as they fall under ecclesial authority and not just civil. But be that as it may, I do appreciate your clarification. I appreciate all your work, and thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Let us know how we can pray for you guys, or how.
Always, please, always.
You got it. We do. We will.
Sir?
Yes, just because I was addressed, I would just like to make a point of clarification. As it states right now, according to the CDC website, which the doctor did not quote, he was quoting hospital numbers, he was quoting some other numbers, but your ordinance says the CDC website, and it is correct that it's about a little under 165 cases right now. When you said you thought it was arbitrary to pick a number out of a hat of what that number should be if you did decide to change the threshold, all I'm suggesting is that we look at a number here in Center County that was similar to when you had no mask mandate. Okay, just remember that. In December, we were at about 500 cases a week. That was before the Omicron wave hit, and there was no mask mandate. That's the number I'm kind of asking you to consider as you talk about changing the threshold. Because I do think that this threshold that you guys are looking at right now is something that we haven't seen except for 7 short weeks in the middle of the summer. And what you're telling us now is that our organizations, our community here, will have to continue to wear our mask until we are at 7 to 10 or 11 cases a day. I think that is unreasonable, and I think it is putting an undue burden on this community. And to the point about speed limits, I just don't see it, honestly. What you're almost saying is that as long as you don't get caught, you're not breaking the law if you're going above the speed limit. That's not the way I look at it. If I'm driving down I-99 at 99 miles an hour, even if I make it from A to B, I know that I've broken the law. And I think that's how these churches view this ordinance. And that's why they take it seriously. And that's why I think that this board should take it seriously about what they're imposing on this community. Thank you.
Thank you. And let me make it perfectly clear that this board here's our community across the board. And we are taking this very seriously. I don't know about you, but I know personally, and I'm saying it, this COVID has almost wiped out all of my family. All of my family. So this, sir, is very personal. It's very personal because I don't want it to happen to your family, or your family, or your family, or your family, or any family of our viewing community out here. This disease is very serious, and I know how each and every board member here feels about our community and how we are very, very concerned of how we move about this to protect all of us, my brothers and sisters in Christ, my brothers and sisters in mosque, Catholics, across the board. Across the board. So as you sit out, please, please know that we do care. We care immensely. Thank you all for your comments, thank you all for coming, and we need to move forward on our agenda. Thank you again.
Madam Chair, could I please request a short recess?
Yes. We are going to take a short recess. Thank you.
You want to see this snow squall?
Yes.
You know, I can share this
Chief here? Oh, Chief. All right, give me a second. Let me know when you're ready, Elliot.
I never took my break, but I'll wait.
All righty. We're back in session here. Next on the agenda is public safety, the January 2022 public police report. Chief Jolly?
Thank you. January was a relatively quiet month for the police department, but you'll see that our officers conducted 134 traffic stops. We wrote 26 citations, 46 parking tickets, and that's mainly contributed to the snow parking enforcement that our officers did, and then handled 15 criminal arrests. Down in department notes, you'll note that a 26-year-old male was arrested for burglary, theft, and receiving stolen property. The male entered a residence and removed property which did not belong to him. A 20-year-old female was arrested for stalking and harassment. The female continued to show up at a residence even though she was uninvited and warned multiple times to stay away. A 35-year-old male was arrested for criminal mischief for damaging property in a common area of one of our apartment complexes. And a 33-year-old female was arrested for retail theft. And while investigating that incident, the officers noted that she had a warrant, a felony warrant from another state. So she was taken into custody and extradited back to that state on her warrant. One arrest was made for public intoxication, 5 arrests were made for retail theft, and 4 were made for driving under the influence. Our officers successfully served 4 of the 5 warrants they attempted to serve, and we conducted 18 vacation home checks in January. I'm happy to report that in the month of January, our officers did not need to use force during any of the incidents that we were involved in. In community relations, we did conduct multiple checks at the Center Sports Complex out by the airport. They have a pretty full slate on the weekends of different activities with different groups coming in from different sports teams around the area and around the states and surrounding states. So we've been making sure that we're showing a presence out there to make sure everybody's staying safe at the complex there. Training department activities, our officers attended tactical response team training. Sergeant Stroud attended a train-the-trainer training, which was for the required MOPEC use of force training our officers are attending actually this month as we speak. Sergeant Shapanko and actually Detective Fedorenko attended a background investigation training, and I attended the Children's Advocacy Center Advisory Committee meeting, and then also the Campus and Community and Union meeting. And we were happy to welcome Officer Adam Wolfinger to our team. He began his employment with Patton Township on January 24th. So he is currently in the field training process right now. I included a nice letter that Officer McCaslin received. I won't read the whole thing to you. You can read it there yourself. He helped a victim of a credit card fraud, and they were just very appreciative of the assistance and guidance that Officer McCaslin provided throughout the investigation into the incident they reported. Lastly, we have our record list, our calls for service for the month of January. You'll note at the top there, we had a total of 428 calls for service. That was up just slightly from the 413 that we handled in December. The breakdown to 428, 105 of those were traffic incidents, and 80 were health and safety EMS assists. So those 2 categories accounted for about half of our calls. And again, just for perspective, of the 105 traffic incidents, 34 of those were for Chick-fil-A incidents. So that completes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
All right, are there any supervisors Supervisor Abrams?
I don't have a question. I'm glad you came out all right in the battle with the deer. And,
Thank you.
And once again, you hit a deer, it costs a lot of dough.
Supervisor Magruder.
Just for clarity, we have 1 school in Patton Township?
We have a middle school, 2 elementary schools, and then a school that actually has autistic children in it as well out by the airport.
Okay. So question, have we ever, I don't know if this is appropriate to be asking, so please tell me if it's not. Have we ever, is there a history of us charging students in any of our schools and our districts with assaults or anything like that?
We've investigated crimes before in the school. We do have a school resource officer. He works 4 hours per day, so a 20-hour week. Most of his time is concentrated at the middle school, but he does visit the elementary schools as well. So yes, we have investigated crimes before. Generally, we rely on the school district to discipline students for any kind of infraction, particularly with school rules. Sometimes those incidents do carry over into something that does violate the crimes code, and we investigate those and would deal with those appropriately in consultation with the district attorney's office as well.
And so the crimes code, I'm trying to get a sense of like what type of crime would necessitate something like that. So would a school fight, for example?
Yeah, it could, sure, certainly. It could be a fight, which could be an assault. That could be harassment. It could be criminal mischief where property is damaged. It could be, we've investigated theft offenses where property belonging to other students or staff or even the school has been removed. So yeah, we investigate all different types of crime at the school.
And so you're saying it's typically left, though, for example, if there was a fight, physical fight that occurred, the deference would be made to the school to handle out any disciplinary actions as opposed to bringing charges, for example.
It all depends on the circumstances. I couldn't just broadly answer that. It would depend on the circumstances of whatever the incident was that we investigated.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other supervisors have any questions for the chief? All right, moving right along, 4B, the proposed amendment to the collective bargaining agreement with Patton Township Professional Police Officers Association. Chief? Or is that Doug?
I'm going to take this.
Okay, Doug.
Yeah, so this started with a grievance filing from an officer questioning our practice of requiring officers to reside within 15 air miles of the township building. The resolution of that grievance is the proposed memorandum of understanding that has been tentatively reached between the township and the Police Officers Association, wherein the residency requirement would be changed to 25 air miles of the township building or within 45 minutes driving time as measured on a weekday by Google Maps. And on the other side of the bargain, because when we're talking about collective bargaining agreement where there's give and take always, is that the Police Officers Association agrees to a change to the current collective bargaining agreement, which would limit arbitration to one time only for any incident that might be appealed under two different sections of the collective bargaining agreement. This issue then would be carried forward and incorporated into the next collective bargaining agreement, which will take effect in January of 2023. And there's also a clause in here that says we won't bargain this any further this year. So my recommendation is that the board review the materials, following a motion and second, discuss the matter and consider action to approve this and authorize the chair to sign on behalf of the township.
Okay, are there any discussion on this? Supervisor Abrams?
Move approval.
Second.
All right. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passed. Thank you, Doug. Moving on, next on the agenda is Public Works Operations. There are no items. Moving on to number 6 is Engineering, Planning, and Zoning. consultant selection for Circleville Road Shared Use Path Phase 2, and I think that is Alexandria?
Susan Wheeler.
Susan.
Susan, all right.
Go ahead, Susan.
Susan?
Yes, Alexander might be able to put up the map of the subject area of where the scoping study is to be performed. But just to give you a bit of background, if you look at the map, the blue route to the south of the yellow box, or to the bottom on the map, is a Circleville Road bike path. And then there is a route, which is the Grays Woods shared use path, that goes through the yellow box, which is the study area. And the purpose of this study is to examine how these two shared use paths can be connected. If you recall, the Circleville Road bike path was constructed in 2016, and the Grays Woods shared use path was constructed in 2019. And in fall of 2020, the board accepted and adopted the Patton Township Parks and Bicycle Pedestrian Path Plan, which identified 5 projects of high importance that should be studied in the next 5 years, one of which was this specific project. So earlier, or late last year, the staff and RAC, the Recreation Advisory Committee, worked on putting together a request for proposals, which we advertised through PennBid. In January, we received 7 proposals to do the alternatives analysis on how we might be able to join these two shared use paths in this vicinity. Of those 7 proposals, they ranged in cost from $30,763 to $94,085. And the RAC at their meeting in January with staff ranked those proposals and decided that they would interview 2 firms. Those 2 firms were Wilson Consulting Group and Buchart Horn. The RAC had some conflicts with scheduling, and so they chose to form an interview committee, which is made up of 4 members, and the interview committee did virtual interviews with the 2 firms in February. The interview committee reported back to the RAC at their February 15th meeting and recommended that Wilson Consulting Group be hired for the project. The RAC discussed that, and the recommendation that they're putting forward to the board is that Wilson Consulting Group be retained for this project at a cost of $47,407.
All right. Susan, thank you so much. Are there any questions from our supervisors? All right.
Just one quick question.
Supervisor Magruder?
As far as like the interview process, like how much do we look into the company when making decisions? So are we just looking at their body of work? Are we looking at their philosophy, social justice around different things? I'm just curious about those extraneous.
Well, included in the packet that's in the agenda, it does have the questions that we had posed to those committees when we did the interviews. We were looking at we had asked each of the each of the firms to provide a 15-minute presentation that was giving us an idea of their background and how their past experiences related specifically to this project. Also to talk about their philosophy and how they approach these kinds of items and projects concerning the immediate neighbors and the other kinds of issues that relate to building facilities like this in communities. So we had looked at that, and then their proposals were quite full because of requirement, and their proposal was not only past experience, but full projects lists and their reports that they've done in the past that we could review. And we then also check references to talk to people who they've already done work with.
Thank you. Is there any questions from our supervisors? Any input from the public at this time? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the project? Supervisor? You're...
So moved.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
can I
sorry.
get a second?
Second.
Discussion. Seeing none,
Right here. I just want to say, I was just blown out of the water by the work, the thoughtfulness that went into this. I'm sure you do this all the time. I mean, I'm certain that you do this all the time, but it was really very exciting to be, have an inside seat in this process. So thank you so much for sharing the questions and the process that you went through to arrive at this. And I had no idea, in fact, that you did not have to go with the lowest bid. So it's always a learning experience for me. Just thank you. And I'm so excited to see this take off. Yeah.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Are you next?
No, I was thanking her.
Okay. Next on the agenda is 6B, the potential fee schedule change for the community garden rental and deposit.
Okay, that'll be me.
All right,
Hello,
Alex.
everybody. The current fee for the community gardens is set at $40 per 500 square foot, which the price has been set since it opened. The township has invested about $18,000 in the gardens over the 3-year span as noted in the agenda, and in addition spends more than what we bring in on the community gardens. I took a look at what Tudic was charging per square foot, and at 12 cents per square foot compared to our 8 cents per square foot, we could charge 50% more. But in the proposal that I put in the agenda, I proposed 25% increase to $50 for the garden plots.
Okay.
So that is the current proposal.
Okay, any of the supervisors have any questions for Alex?
I don't have a
Supervisor
question.
Trevino?
I am currently a renter of garden plot, two garden plots in fact. And I definitely have no problem with an increase in the rental fee. I can tell everybody who's watching from my personal experience of being there for 7, 8 years, something like that. The township staff, maintenance and care and everything related to the community garden is exceptional. I'll point out Mr. Soder, because at the time he was in charge of supervising the community gardens. The response was always fantastic whenever I noticed any kind of an issue. Their response to gardeners who complained about invasive rodents, rabbits and groundhogs entering garden, putting out live traps and then safely removing those trapped animals and so forth, I thought was done very well. So I'm very happy to continue supporting the fee, and I would be willing to pay more, but I'm not offering that as an amendment. I'm just saying, I think $50 a year is a bargain.
Okay. Can I get a board concur? Supervisor Abrams?
I move approval of the seed money.
All right, well, all we need is a board concur. Doug, am I not?
Yeah, we weren't sure how much public interest there were in this fee, so we wanted to run it by you before we did a formal change. So there'll be something in the consent agenda at the next meeting.
I assume you'll send an email to all the current renters as well.
Yeah, because we need to start getting notices out to them. We've been waiting.
How about that we're going to consider this increase in our public meeting?
Yeah, we can do
To be
that.
aware of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Supervisor Whitman?
Just wondering if we could offer I'm trying to think of the right word, a fee reduction if somebody felt they needed it and then requested that. I am very comfortable paying that. I think most people there are, but there might be somebody for whom that would be a hardship, and would the board want to consider that?
Supervisor
I don't know
Serena?
how hard it is to administer that.
I kind of, I find it hard to believe that an extra $10 a year, we're talking about a year, it would be a fiscal hardship on somebody who's a current renter. He's already paying $40 a year, so.
I guess I wasn't thinking of that so much as somebody new to the township. But I think it's fine. If I have a good ear to the ground, if I hear any concerns about that, I'll bring it up again.
Okay.
And this will cause us to break even
Yeah.
as a township, like operating costs?
It's not a break even, it's, no.
The township still subsidizes
Yes.
quite a lot, and you saw the breakdown of
Yeah.
the
But if-
expenses.
Yeah, what if all the plots were rented out? I'm not even sure how many are.
There are, 137 plots, and currently we're only renting 100, so.
Okay.
Yeah, even
That's still most of them. Okay.
somewhere I have some notes. I can't-
Okay, can I pull everyone back to order?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Sutan? Okay. All right. Any other, Doug, do we need anything else?
Nope.
All right,
So we'll bring
moving.
that to the next meeting with a formal.
All right, next on the agenda. 6C is grant contract approval for Atherton Street Green Light Go project.
This is on the agenda because it's,
Yeah, what happened?
there's a twist to it. Let's just be honest. There's a twist to it that the board needs to be fully aware of before we go forward with this. So as you recall, and if you have questions about the exact what they're gonna do, we have 3 members from PennDOT who've been on the screen or on Zoom with us, and they're ready to talk about the project specifically. What I'm gonna talk about is the contractual relationship we're gonna have with PennDOT, and then the township solicitor may weigh in too, because we've been talking about this with them for a bit. But they approached us last year. This project covers improvements to traffic signals on Atherton Street from Patton Township all the way to Harris Township. To use PennDOT grant money, state grant money, they needed a local sponsor. Now, we do this, we've done this in several different ways. You know, we were a local sponsor for the Nittany Valley Sports Center. We're a local sponsor for a state grant for Abington Equine Hospital. So this one, we're actually the local sponsor for PennDOT District 2, let's just say, because they're the ones that are pushing it very hard. Plus folks from the central office, Stephen Galt, who's with us. So they were able to secure the funding through a program called Green Light Go, and we've done other projects through Green Light Go with the district folks where we actually had things to do. But the twist then comes in with, PennDOT said this wouldn't cost us a dime. We needed a local sponsor. We said, yeah, sounds good, we can go through it. PennDOT central office sends me the contract last fall, and I turned to page, I think 2 or something, and it says the township has to pay 20%. And I said, no, wait, time out. Can't do that, that's not the deal we struck. So what transpires between then and now is that they have provided us a letter to go along with this contract, and it's from Mr. Stephen Galt, who's the chief of TSMO, Arterials and Planning Section of the Highway Safety and Traffic Operations Division of the central office, saying, no, the real intent was that PennDOT will also cover the match portion out of other funds that they have available, and the township won't have to pay that match. So the solicitor and I looked at this closely. We had some concerns. They have, I think most of our concerns have been satisfied because PennDOT has bundled these 2 documents together. So if you have access to their online document management system, when you go in to find the contract document, you also find this letter. So we feel fairly certain that they will be read together, and if read together, then it shows that clearly that PennDOT has the intent to cover all the costs for us. And I feel fairly certain that we can go forward. I think people who have been also, we're going to be the contracting authority also, although PennDOT's they're hiring the consultant, they're going to put all the work together, but it'll be one of us who's signing off on everything. So we have control over making sure that the scope of the project stays within budget, and then afterwards, if there is something that requires additional money, we can say, whoa, stop, slow down, Mr. PennDOT or Ms. PennDOT, please find us additional funding. And if you've sat on the MPO committee, which several of us have, we know that PennDOT has several pots of money that they can pull money out of one pot and transfer to another pot. And I don't know who's doing that these days now that Vicki Rushneck retired, but Vicki was the queen of moving money around and finding money for you. So, but PennDOT has that ability. So we're fairly certain, and I won't speak for the solicitor. I think we'll put her on the spot and let her tell you something. But we're fairly confident, let me put it that way, that we can move forward with the structure has been proposed. I just wanted to make sure we were abundantly clear that how this is structured, because if you go and you just pull up the contract and look at it, it says there's a 20% match required. So with that, Betsy, would you like to weigh in for a few seconds?
Yeah, I would just add that there is correspondence that I think is going to be part of the grant. At least it won't be in the grant, but it will be adjacent to it, that indicates from the regional office that the township is not obligated for the match. And so we were comfortable if that could be included, that it would cover us from a perspective of the four corners of the document.
Okay.
So again,
Thank you.
if somebody's curious about the project, we have these gentlemen who can tell you how it'll improve things. But if you're satisfied with the legal end of things, we can move forward and thank them for their attendance.
Well, Supervisor Abrams.
I would like to thank them for coming to this accommodation, and I think we should give it the green light.
I agree.
There's
any
one other
others?
little twist, if I may. There was, when I went back and looking at our own paperwork for this project, I went back and looked at our authorizing resolution and found that there was a mistake in it. So I put together an updated resolution. So if we're going to take action to approve this, we also need to approve resolution 2022-006.
All right, I have that in there.
Can I
So we have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passed. Doug?
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you,
Thanks, Jim.
PennDOT.
We'll be in touch.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Doug. Thank you very much, and thank you, everyone.
Thank
for
you.
hanging in there.
Moving on, next on the agenda is administration, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Supervisor Whitman?
Sure, yeah, so thanks, and I want to thank Doug Erickson for pointing this out to me. Last meeting, one meeting ago, a while ago, I proposed that we add a diversity, equity, and inclusion item to our agenda so that we are letting the world know that Patton is indeed a place for all, and we want to be very proactive in this particular area. So a day hadn't passed, but I got in my inbox a notice of this upcoming workshop, which is Advancing Racial Equity Through Land Use and Planning. Nicole Pollock and I are both going to be attending that.
I've signed up too.
Oh, excellent. So, and then Nicole and I got together and thought it would be fun to put a little presentation together for the board in 2 weeks. So I think I emailed Doug on that. So we'll see. So you get a little rundown on it. And I'm also emailing all of the other people in various townships, municipalities, and COG about this, people that I've already reached out to about DEI items on agendas. But I also actually shared it with people on the Climate Action and Sustainability Committee because we are looking at housing and part of the climate action program, and also because in one of the workshops or one of the presenters, he will not only address specific suggestions of what can be done, but he will also address topics of public outreach, language access, citizen empowerment, and non-traditional engagement methods, which is something actually that I think will behoove all of us to have a little more information on. So I'm really looking forward to this for both the content and the process. And I also just wanted to add that the way I envision this diversity, equity, and inclusion item was that we wouldn't necessarily have to have a freestanding item in this, at this point in the agenda, but that we could point to another item that was already on the agenda that also addresses the need for constantly being on the forefront of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I just wanted to add or note that item 7.3 below, which is update on the Human Relations Commission, will also be addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, yeah, cool, thank you.
And what I would like to add is a proclamation recognizing February as Black History Month. The proclamation reads, "A place for all, Patton Township proclamation, whereas since 1976, every United States president has officially designated the month of February as National Black History Month to honor and affirm the importance of Black history throughout the American experience. And whereas the United States joined the international communities, including Canada, Ireland, and United Kingdom, in devoting a month recognizing the many contributions during Black History Month. The United States and Canada celebrates it in February, while it's observed in Ireland and United Kingdom in October. Whereas the observance of Black history began in 1926 with historian, writer, and educator Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who has been called the father of Black history, and with Minister Jesse Moreland, who sponsored the first National Negro History Week, which was celebrated the second week in February, and later in 1960s as a part of the observance that involved into Black History Month. Whereas the theme of Black History Month for 2022 is Black Health and Wellness. The awareness and devastation of COVID-19 cases with African Americans continue to bring the importance and focus on the healthcare system and its disparities of resources to African Americans. But the acknowledgement of better healthcare and resources, when provided, can promote holistic wellness and healthier communities. Whereas Black History Month recognizes and pays tribute to the contributions of African Americans have made to the American history in the continual struggle for freedom, equity, and deepens the understanding of our shared history, as well as remembering the important, influential people and events in our history. Whereas Black History Month is a time for all Americans to remember the legacy of African Americans who helped build our nation, fought against prejudice in order to secure lives with dignity and opportunity for all citizens to be equal, to advance the cause of civil rights for all Americans, and to strengthen our families and communities that will be a place for all. Now therefore, Patton Township Board of Supervisors do hereby join the nation in honoring the contributions made by African Americans and recognizing February as Black History Month in Patton Township.
Madam Chair, I move acceptance of this proclamation.
Is there a second? Discussion? All in favor?
Can I say something?
Yes, Supervisor Magruder.
This isn't fully thought out, but I appreciate this proclamation that Patton Township is, I guess, proclaiming the importance and necessity, I guess, of recognizing Black History Month. I think for potential viewers who may be questioning the need for this proclamation, I would simply point to the actions that we've been seeing across the United States regarding the teaching, I guess, of American history. It's saddened me for sure, and I feel disheartened given how far this country has come with respect to racial equity, or I guess realizing racial equity. And in a matter of, it seems like a few years, perpetrated by individuals who are supposed to, I think, uphold the Constitution and make sure that we are, as a nation, moving forward together. Unfortunately, these individuals, I think with nefarious purposes, have sought to sow division, I guess, by trying to be careful with my words. Sought to sow division by this is difficult. By seeking to minimize, I guess, the importance of race and culture within the fabric of our society, and in doing so, in our institutions right now, particularly in education, we've seen that now our young children, our young people, our adults even, non-traditional students are being taught information that is incomplete. And I think does a disservice then for bringing individuals together and allowing us to move forward together as a nation. And so when we talk about Black history, it's important to understand this is something that's been embedded, I guess, within our governments, I guess, in recognition because it's been excluded in history. So Black history, while it's honored, I guess, and recognized within 1 month, Black history should be recognized in all months. And so, again, for those who are listening and watching, that is the reason why I think it's important for us to recognize the contributions of the Black community in building this nation. And I hope, more people will sort of look into their hearts and understand that we can't ignore groups of individuals, and we can't exclude the teaching of American history, the full history of the United States within our education system. Because as we look to history, and when information has been excluded, we've seen the downfall of societies. And I would not like that to happen in the United States, country I love, and that I want to be better. And so thanks for bringing this proclamation here, and thanks for entertaining my long-winded statement.
Thank you. And so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The proclamation is passed.
One comment.
Supervisor Abrams.
I found it interesting this month that on Sirius XM, on the Soul Channel, which is Channel 49, is the different hosts have been pointing out how different songs in the 60s and early 70s tried to express these views. And when I heard the songs again, some of them I hadn't even realized what they were saying until now, even though I
grew up with
appreciated those songs when I listened to them just for the value of the song back then.
All right, thank you. Moving on, next on the agenda is the pending board work task. Doug?
Yes, thank you. I emailed out the list of questions and the subject to the board members last week, and they all replied. I tabulated those results, and as you see in the middle of page 11 there was the tentatively ranked that the board members collectively came to with these pending work tasks. There was a potential score between 0 and 15 for each item. And as you see, regulations of single-use plastics came in on the top of the list, and then regulating special events on public property and so on down through 5 and 6. I just note that there were 2 board members on items 4 and 5 who were willing to drop those issues, but there was enough interest from the other board members to leave it on the list. So I would ask the board to review that list and see if that's the priority ranking you'd like to move forward with, or if there's some reason you'd like to change something, and then give me direction. I'll start working at number 1.
Okay. Any board members? Would you agree, Supervisor Abrams?
I just had, you said that the straw issue came in first?
Yeah. It was high on most people's list.
Because that wasn't my, I would have it dropped, because I think it needs to be done on a regional and state basis rather than by individual municipalities.
Wait, what did you say?
I think it needs to be done regionally or by the state, so as to avoid the conflict that we have one regulation and all our neighbors have some other one.
Well, that's why we're bringing it up to discuss it, because that, in fact, is one of the tenets of moving forward on it.
Right.
As I think has been mentioned before, that there are 2 other municipalities that are seriously considering it, Ferguson and State College.
Well, I've talked with some people who were upset that we were doing it because they didn't see that part of it. They said, why are you just going to do this in that township? And I don't think that's been I don't believe that that's been the intent all along.
Right.
I think
Never has been.
the intent was to have as many people join in as possible.
All right. Supervisor Whitman, you have a comment?
No, that was it. Just, it's got to be
Doug?
regional if it's going to work. And that was the intent all along in bringing it forward. In fact, it's already being explored through one of the classes at Penn State, Laura Fowler and her students.
All right, on the stargazing, I know that was one of the issues. Are we still going to keep that on the list?
I was just unclear. That seemed fairly straightforward, and so why not just make a statement about where we stand on that so we can be done with it?
Doug? Whew.
Careful, don't
Back to you.
In terms of the stargazing
Yes.
issue, well, the issue is whether the board wants to issue permits to individuals to do it. The Parks and Rec is issuing permits to groups that want to do it, and that schedule through Parks and Rec. The request is from at least one individual in Patton Township is that they originally had an individual permit and would like to have another individual have a new individual permit so that they could go into the parks.
All right.
The issue then is what criteria would you use to qualify people for an individual permit? Because you can't issue them because you like somebody. So you have to have some set of criteria that said this person's qualified to get a individual permit to go into the park when they're normally closed. So we would need to come up with some program to develop those criteria.
It seems like
Supervisor McGruder?
it seems like the Parks and Rec director had said they don't want to move forward with giving individual permits, that wasn't historically a thing, but it became a thing by the previous individual.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
So, I mean, but the Board of Supervisors, there are parks, Patton Township owns them. For the most part, we let the Director of Parks and Rec at COG set the rules, but if the board wanted to set some different rules for different things, we would have that ability. Internally, like I said, we go back, if you want to issue permits for people to do certain special things, and we should develop some sort of criteria that people have to meet to qualify for those permits. It's not just individual A gets one and individual B doesn't get one.
As it stands, is the board satisfied that we go with the list that Doug has put together with all our votes?
I'm satisfied.
Yep.
All right?
You're a real star.
All right, Doug, do we
Okay,
need to vote on this, or
No,
it's
no.
consent?
No, you've all given your input.
All right.
I'll start working with Betsy and put something together on the
Yeah, but just-
number on
Yeah,
the
that's
top-rated item.
And we've talked about it before, but we wanted to wait till we went.
I need to be refreshed.
All right,
Process
next up
formally.
on the
Exactly.
agenda is update to the Regional Human Relations Commission. Doug?
Yeah, Ferguson Township seems to be taking somewhat of the lead right now on this issue. So I'm relying heavily on what they did and the information that the management from Ferguson Township has passed on to me. So without reading through everything, the top two bullet points on page 12 of the agenda are probably the issues if you want to have some discussion tonight. Would be apropos. The first item is inclusion or exclusion of support animals as a protected class. And there was some additional information included in your agenda materials about support animals and how they are permitted in places of business and things like that. That's not really, I think the issue that is more problematic for some people with is support animals and housing. And whether, if a landlord has a no pets policy, does that cover support animals or not? Can you exclude a support animal from somebody's home housing? That's a legal issue that I think we're gonna have to get some input on. But for now, Ferguson Township has agreed that it should be included. The other then issue is that seems to be a difference of opinions about joint filings. Recall that there is a state Human Relations Commission, and then local municipalities have their option of forming their own local Human Relations Commission. So there's, I think, about a dozen local ones that vary from, large third-class cities and things down to a few regional ones like we do.
So can I
Some people think that there's an obligation that you file, that if somebody files with our regional HRC, then that we're obligated to file that complaint with the state. Others believe that's not the case. So you can see Ferguson Board supports allowing the complainant to file. There's no prohibition from filing in both jurisdictions. It's whether the regional body has some obligation to do it on behalf of the complainant or not.
Doug, can we table this for our next meeting and give us some time to research this?
If I don't have any more information on this right now, unless you want me to go to the solicitor and get information on this, if that's what you're asking.
Huh?
Betsy has her hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Betsy? That's Solicitor
Yep,
Dupree?
I'm happy to, if you want to table this, to have further conversations with the manager. There was a legal opinion that was circulated, and I believe, Doug, you got a copy of it, but I'm not actually sure about many of these issues. That was prepared by the solicitor for Bellefonte Borough. I think there are still some legal questions about a couple of these things. I think we know the answer on the dual filing issue. The problem that I think was raised was the original ordinance required that the municipalities notify the Human Relations Commission. I don't think there's a requirement that we have to. I think the issue here is that the applicant needs to be aware that if they file with you, whatever rights they may have under the State Human Relations Commission are not necessarily covered here because it's a local ordinance and the process is not the same. And what I mean by that is that the State Human Relations Commission has a pretty standard process by which complaints are filed, information is taken, an investigation is done, and in some cases, a determination is made. More often than not, a right to sue letter is issued and it's passed on. This is no different than the fact that you have an obligation, not an obligation, but you may need to file both with the Human Relations Commission and the Equal Opportunity, the EEOC Commission, which is a federal body, at the same time, depending upon the type of claim, if it's an employment-related claim. And there's no obligation, again, in that circumstance, for the PHRC to communicate with the EEOC and vice versa. It's all on you to do that. So I think that confusion came around because of the original draft, but I can certainly sit down with the manager and discuss this further and also review that, those provisions. The support animal issue, and I appreciated the materials with the agenda. The issue is not about animals that support a disabled individual or someone that needs assistance. We're not supposed to use all those terminologies. It is animals that any one of us could go out right now tonight and get our animal set up as a support animal. There's no qualifications for these animals. They are not trained. They are simply, and incidentally, I found the FAA paperwork. I think that was in your materials, Doug. Very fascinating because it's become very important when people have tried to come on planes with their non-traditional support animals. There's a real concern among the lawyers who looked at this that you are exceeding what currently the PHRC does, and you may not be able to, you have to think about how you enforce those things. And you know, here's the odd circumstance that I think got put in the ordinance, but I need to look at it again. If you make a decision, it's local Human Relations Commission, what is the person's rights, whether it's the complainant because you rule against them or the party on the other side, what are their rights? Usually they can go to the Court of Common Pleas. It's not a structure that normally happens. So when somebody files with PHRC and they issue what's called a right to sue letter, most of the time those individuals go to federal court. It's typically understood that's where they're heading anyways. And so the question then becomes, you know, what's the relief that you afford? So I'm just posing these things to you. I think there should be a little more conversation about this, so that we all understand what. I just don't want you to set something up and then have people come to you and feel like I'm not really getting any further than I might have otherwise. And the borough, I think, and Doug, you can correct me, I think they've only had 4 or 5 complaints actually filed under their ordinance, which has been in place for a while.
Yeah, they said it's less than 1 per year.
Okay, so if it is with the board's approval, can we table it until we have more information?
Yes. Okay, I will work with Betsy and bring you back some more information.
Well, thank you very much. Moving next on the agenda, the consent agenda, number 8. Is there any item or items on the consent agenda that the supervisors would like to discuss or remove from the consent agenda at this time? Manager or manager? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda passed. Moving next on the agenda, the manager's report. Doug?
I just wanted to share a couple of recycling reports, annual recycling reports to show. The first one looks like that is township, what we do collectively, and so we collected almost 1,200 tons of leaves and 623 tons of brush. So all that, plus there, if you look at the bottom, there's some clean fill and concrete also. So all that was diverted from landfills and was taken over to the borough compost yard and turned into recycled materials. On the other hand, we also got another report from Center County Recycling and Refuse Authority, and this is for the cardboard collection over by the Clearwater. So 105,000 pounds of cardboard in 1 year, so that's a lot of cardboard. So, and I know, because I find it's easier for me just to stick it in my car than to haul it to the end of my driveway sometimes. And if you go there, don't go there on a Monday and try to get rid of your cardboard. Because everybody else has been there on Sunday.
Right.
And they fill up those 3 or 4 containers, will all be full of cardboard on a Monday morning, so. But that's a lot of cardboard, and I want to thank everybody for doing their part to make sure that it all gets diverted from the landfills and gets recycled. Other than that, township offices will be closed on April 15th and May 30th. Household hazardous waste, there was a change, I just saw it today, I think. Household hazardous waste is now April 29th and the 30th instead of the dates that are listed on the agenda, so that will get corrected for the next. And then municipal primary is May 18th. Or that's not municipal primary, it's state primary. And take out municipal. Primary election, May 18th.
Okay. Doug,
End of my report.
Doug, as a reminder, are there any action items for March the 9th?
Well, we have, yes, we're gonna deal with the COVID ordinance again, so on March 9th, and I think I've got a couple other things I noted that we'll bring forward, so yes, we will have a meeting on the 9th.
Okay. All right. Next on the agenda is the committee reports. Is there any supervisor that would like to add to the committee report at this time? Supervisor Abrams.
I attended the MPO meeting last night, and I hadn't realized this before, but there's a project called the State College Connector, which is what you would think is the connection between Potter's Mills and State College to make a 4-lane road to connect the last section of road between the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific. It's 2-lane to make it 4 lanes. But that's not what's happening, actually. We're not in the area that's being asked really for our direct opinions, nor is State College Borough. Harris Township and College Township are in it, as well as the ones, everyone in Penns Valley. But the way it was explained, we can all come to the public meetings that discusses it, but in my opinion, that's not good enough. I think that it's a regional issue that we should invite participation, even for our western suburbs and on out. There was a proposal years ago to have a corridor O that extended all the way through to Phillipsburg, so if you wanted to get on 80, you simply went out on a 4-lane road and got on 80 directly rather than going north first. And if it's all to be decided by the people on the other side of town, the road they are considering is going up to Mount Nittany, going through or over it, and having a road just like Athens Street extending all the way out to where the bypass ends now, way out 7 miles to the east. And I think that's just asking for trouble.
Okay. Do you know the date of the April meeting? Do you want
I think it's about the 23rd, but I'm not sure.
23rd? Are there?
The decision hasn't been made yet, but I know we always, when we have an issue here, we usually try to find the maximum number of people that we can notify that might be affected by it. And I think that everyone in the area is going to be affected by this. I was surprised that, for example, the university is not in the area.
Okay. Well, keep me posted. Maybe one of our, or two of our supervisors might attend by Zoom. All right, any other comments for your committee, Supervisor Whitman?
To add that the Climate Action and Sustainability Committee met on February 14th, and it wasn't listed there. So I just gave you my report, so it'll be in the next set of agenda. But I wanted to report something really cool, which I wrote also. I put a little graphic in there because somebody at the planning department has gone to a map system, an interactive map. I don't believe it's posted yet on the COG website, but when it is, you'll be able to look at all of the center region and zoom in and zoom out and see where all of the projects for renewable energy are. So you can look at electric cars, you can look at, there's a couple of geothermals, there's, of course, solar panels on houses. It's pretty cool. So if you're a map person like I happen to be, and a sustainable energy person like I am. So anyway, that's it.
Okay, any other supervisor? I'll be submitting my executive board report since we just met yesterday at our next meeting. Okay, are there any other comments from the supervisors at this time or the manager? Seeing